fish swimming in a sea of chips, shuffling cards with quick fingertips. Ben's got the banter, Sam's got the flair. Two jokers laughing, no sharks in their lair. Two fish at the table, making a splash, stacking bad beats, talking some trash. Fold or go all in, let's see what you got. It's a podcast party, the action's red hot. The river runs wild, the flop's a surprise. Kings in their pockets.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend Ben, one on Poker Stars.
Yeah, my other host, East Coast Sam on Poker Stars. Welcome to this very special episode. We're doing sort of a poker sequels type thing. We're going to be taking a look at a couple different properties. Pretty excited for this one. A lot of interesting stuff to go over.
Yeah, sequels really take the form of multiple shapes in the entertainment world. You have sequels that are like a natural continuation of the first part of a story. You have maybe like an annualized release scheduling sequel where it's like Madden 03, Madden 04, Madden 05, Madden 06, etc. Or maybe you have sort of an in-between where it's like it's the next part of that franchise's journey, but it's sort of like drawing a lot of inspiration and vibes from the original entry. And so, on that note here, we're really talking about, in this case here, the sequel to the GameCube game we reviewed a fair amount back, the 2006 WSOP Tournament of Champions, called the '07 edition, though, which is the sequel to the GameCube game that we reviewed in our poker video games episode a while back. And this game definitely kind of falls more into the video game annual release, where it's maybe a slightly upgraded version of the last entry, maybe a new mode or two, maybe some better graphics. And in this case, it's kind of like it's like half a step better in every kind of part of a game that I would be expecting as a gamer for most of my life.
And as a sequel to that discussion, we are discussing the Big Game Season 2. That is the new version of the Big Game, as you know, same host as before, but obviously a different lineup with the loose cannon, with a couple of different differences from the old version. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk about each of these. There's some parts of each, the video game and Season 2 that I liked better than the original, some parts that I thought were a bit weaker. A lot to discuss and go into. So I figure let's just get right into it. We're going to start off with the video game, which has been mentioned is the '07 edition, the Jerry Yang version, if you will. When we were booting this up on the Wii, I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be, pretty much the exact same thing. And yeah, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to the original. It's basically just a poker video game that you play different tournaments, can also play a couple different modes like Hold'em or Fold'em, with a big emphasis on Chris Ferguson. So this game really hasn't aged very well, all things considered. Obviously, that whole fracas, if you will, was several years away. But yeah, I mean, it's essentially just a poker video game. You play a tournament, you're dealt hands, and again, a wide range of hands, king three offsuit and 8-6 offsuit, and pocket kings again, and pocket kings again, and pocket aces, as Ben and I discovered while playing this. And also a pretty interesting feature in terms of being able to customize your character. Probably the most expansive character customization I've seen in any video game ever, that you can change the age of your character, their face shape, their body type, their skin detail, their skin tone, their eye color, your hair option, your hairstyle, facial hairstyle, your pants, your shoes, and your hair. So that's, I think, 12 that I just listed right there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, having been a gamer for a bit more than you over the years, like a game like Skyrim probably has a bit more of customization to the character. But as far as like this generation of video games, this came out right in that sort of cross point between the sixth and seventh video game generation. So kind of like GameCube, Wii, PS2, Xbox 360 era. And so as far as the game standard at that time, definitely one of the more comprehensive uh, customization features I've seen in a game. EA was definitely pretty good about this, especially in these modes where you're kind of like a sports or game career mode where you're making a character and they're playing in whether it's Madden, superstar mode, or in this case, World Series Poker career mode. And but the biggest difference really here with this game versus the previous iteration for the GameCube is that there's a bit more structure and not quite story, but more narrative to this career mode. So this game does have the quick play mode where you just jump in, play a poker game. You pick the table, you pick the blinds and stuff. But or there's this main mode called Tournament of Champions mode where it begins with an opening cutscene. You make your character first. Chris Ferguson is dealing to a bunch of NPCs and you, and the premise is that he's going to take one of these players under his wing as his protege. And whether you win or lose this opening table doesn't matter. There's a cutscene to accommodate for both, if either you win or either you lose. And then he's kind of your mentor as you progress with. It's sort of a kind of like almost like a mission mode in a video game where you have a few options of which tournaments you want to play, managing your bankroll to earn points. And by earning points in those tournaments, you can qualify for the Tournament of Champions, which I'm fairly certain is just a tournament full of all the poker pros that were given exposure in this game, so that it's kind of like an all-star game, a Pro Bowl, or something of like that, or like the WPT, the Tournament of Champions, where everybody who wins an event gets to be in the tournament. And so that's kind of like the final level, the final boss of that mode. And so again, it's not the most complicated gameplay, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to have a bit more of a structure and a narrative to this mode compared to sort of the meandering gameplay of the first game in the series, where it was just kind of like you just play a bunch and try to earn money, and maybe you earn a few achievements along the way. You unlock some trophies or what, and there's trophies in this game too. So a small touch, but it definitely adds a bit more polish and a bit more unique to this game compared to say Poker Superstars Invitational for the PC, which is really just aimless game. Again, and these cutscenes are a little cheesy, like every tournament, like Ferguson talks to you, like giving some sort of dialogue line. But imagine, and then your character actually replies to him. So remember, you're playing either a male or a female character in different voices. So there's a bit of variety in sort of the conversation. So again, it's kind of silly, but also I kind of thought, at least they were trying a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole opening cutscene right at the beginning where Chris Ferguson's like, "Yeah, I lost some bet," and there's some like humorous some bet involving a duck in the desert or something. So now I have to play this. Yeah, it's pretty cheesy, and Chris Ferguson's clearly just reading the lines off of a sheet of paper. Like he's not a very good actor. No offense to him, but yeah, there's a little bit more effort involved. Ben and I played this, and we switched off every level, and so we got second place in this opening here. And so there was like a little cutscene afterward where the guy's like, "All right, I won, I beat you, so I get to go to the Tournament of Champions, right?" And Chris goes, "Well, hold on, I didn't say anything about the player who wins, just the player who's impressive the most. And you were the most impressive, so we get to go to the Tournament of Champions." Again, like a little bit of thought was put into this, as Ben mentioned. But really the sort of kicker in terms of the celebrities for me were Lon and Norm, actually, both of them being in this game and both of them having banter and commentary, which sounds pretty reminiscent of the banter that they have on the WSOP broadcast. Nothing exceptionally funny or anything, but ex-wife jokes and things like that, the typical stuff you expect from Lon and Norm. But again, the fact that that's in the game and that they were both there, again, it makes it better than the original in that respect. And it does, again, feel like their actual commentary. They're both, fairly good at, reading their lines off of a sheet of paper, better than Chris Ferguson, at least. So yeah, it was just a nice touch. But again, it's just pretty typical poker tournament for the most part. And as you're going along and playing it, you have to change the settings, as Ben and I discovered. For one thing, it doesn't automatically show your cards. So you're dealt your hand, and then you have to hold A, and there's this little animation of you sort of lifting the cards up, and you see, okay, I've got 10-3, I've got pocket kings, what have you. You have to go into the settings and enable them so that it just automatically shows your hand. You also have to hit the A button over, and because if you fold, then you have to kind of sit through the rest of the hand. You have to keep hitting the A button over and over again in order to move through the action. Though Ben and I would, often not do that when the player was all in, so we could kind of have a tense moment of seeing the cards being dealt. I mean, that to me got pretty tedious after a while. I mean, especially if you're kind of card dead and things aren't really going your way, you're just hitting the A button over and over again. In terms of the actual quality of the poker from the AIs, I mean, it's okay, I suppose. It's nothing that, a player with some experience would find too difficult. Maybe a little wonky here and there, but I mean, do you want to play this over, say, play money on Poker Stars or play money on Party Poker, which was around at the time? I mean, I don't think so. I think you'd rather just play against actual players who will, you can learn better from them instead of just playing this weird AI.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the there's called the peek at cards mechanic where you'd hit the on the Wii it'd be the minus button on the Wiimote, and I should mention that this is kind of an example of in sequels and video games where they kind of add these sort of superfluous gameplay or like touches to make the game a bit more realistic or a little bit fancier. But a lot of times if you're like a regular for a franchise, you might kind of like phase those out and get to the core of the game. Like we had that on for maybe the first maybe 20 hands or so, just because it was kind of cool and a novelty of sorts. But then once you get over that novelty factor, you'll just sort of discard it. And that's kind of the case for a lot of this sort of annual release video games in general, if you ask me. I know that like with Call of Duty especially, that's a big thing for a lot of players.
Mhm.
The graphics are still kind of ugly, but this is still, it's almost a 20-year-old game, and I'd argue that the models are maybe mildly less ugly than the last game, especially Lon and Norm. They definitely look much better compared to the just awful Wallace and Gromit clay blob that Lon was in the first game. The camera and the actual casino appearance in the game, I can argue maybe like a marginally better. So again, it was these sort of incremental improvements across the game's various presentation elements, and so I guess I was okay with that. Although there was a very odd glitch during the end of our opening tournament play where like the camera kind of got stuck in a fixed angle with the dealer, so it was like stuck looking at the dealer from like their like side profile, and it wouldn't like pan around the table, which is very strange. But I know that EA is kind of known for buggy games, so I guess I wasn't too taken off guard by this development. And you mentioned the Hold'em or Fold'em mode, and again, that's another example of where it's kind of a gimmicky mode where in the middle of the hand you could hit the button when it's your turn, and Chris would tell you whether to fold or play the hand in that situation. And again, it reminds me of those commercials, the Milwaukee's Best Light commercials from ESPN,
Mhm.
20 years ago, which I kind of liked. But then again, it's just not a mode that I would ever find myself engaging in if I was playing this game again, for example. And so we played this we only played for about 100 minutes, maybe like a little over an hour and a half, under 2 hours to get a good enough taste of this game because again it's a lot of the same gameplay from the GameCube game. But we know I think we had a fairly good time. I was enjoying passing the controller back, seeing how we would do. We ended up playing in one Tournament of Champions tournament. It was a 27 player pot limit Hold'em tournaments, which has a couple of poker players intermixed into the tournament field, and most notably Antonio Esfandiari, who made the final table along with us. And basically, you begin an event, you have a little bit with Chris Ferguson giving you some advice, and then if you make the final table, he'll give you another sort of cutscene advice scene after that. And while you're playing in the game, sometimes you're unlocking trophies or achievements, as they're called in other video games, and also there's a menu for poker tools. So it's like hand rankings, poker odds. So that's kind of cool. Again, I feel like that lends a bit towards the providing a poker education for the average Joe who bought this game. And again, it's not something that really would benefit you or me right now, but again, it's nice that they were trying to add something else to the original package.
But we should mention that we accidentally enabled the poker tools menu and we could not figure out how to close out of it. So we actually had to kind of stop the game and go and look it up so that we could get out of the menu. Yeah, little bugs here and there, as you mentioned, the camera angles. One sort of interesting feature is that you can kind of enable the camera so that it's your like POV from your player at the table and you can look around the table. And it's kind of cool. But again, we got the camera angle stuck and we couldn't figure out how to change it back. So yeah, I mean, you can tell they're trying to make this a little bit, different. They're trying to make this a little bit, I guess, gimmicky in comparison to the previous ones, add these new touches. Some of them are okay, some of them not so much. But again, at least they're trying to make an effort, make this a bit more special than the typical poker game or, whatever exactly was around at the time. Yeah, I mean, Antonio Sfondiari being at the table, I mean, it's kind of cool, like, oh, you're going up against Antonio Sfondiari, so to speak. But he doesn't really say much. He doesn't really play differently than the other players. So, it kind of gets a little bit old after a while. And in terms of how we actually did at the tournament, we actually got third place, the top three people cash. And unfortunately, we flopped top pair with King 10, and then our opponent had aces, so we busted in third. But we were able to cash and get points in the TOC. So, Ben and I will, of course, pick this game back up, and we'll play all the way to the Tournament of Champions and make the main event, I'm sure. But yeah, like, would I recommend this game now? Maybe on a nostalgia trip, if you have a GameCube or a Wii and you're looking to look at games from the mid 2000s, I might recommend it. It might be kind of like a fun game night type thing. You and your buddies gather around the television. You switch off every round, and if you lose a hand, you take a sip. Turn into a little drinking game or something. That might be kind of fun. But does a player who wants to actually play in the WSOP and you're studying solvers and GTO, should you play this game? No, but it's not intended for you. It was intended for the general audience at the time when the WSOP was in its golden era. So for what it is, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, to address your point about the game's AI, when you're skipping through the hands, it kind of like almost shields the AI from criticism because you're not really following what they're doing or if it makes sense or not. So, for the most part, again, much like in the last game, I was just kind of like folding the rag hands and waiting until I had big cards because,
Mhm.
the AI can be prone just to raise you light anyway. So you might as well, tighten up a little bit. I would say that I probably gave the first game a strong 2 out of 5. And I'd go this game is just good enough to maybe be a weak 3 out of 5 by like the X Play standards. I mean, besides the one or two glitches there, I did, enjoy the time we spent with the game. And I imagine if this was 18 years ago, whatever, when it came out 19 years ago, again, you could probably get a good amount of mileage out of it. I don't imagine someone would only want to play for a couple hours. You want to, go through at least one or two seasons of the Tournament of Champions mode. And there are 3 levels of difficulty. So maybe someone plays through it to play through some of the levels there. And again, there's a fair amount of achievements, and I don't know, it was fun to make some ugly characters, and there's actually like way too many voice options for each custom character, which is kind of funny. So you could have some fun making some just the most absurd characters possible. And again, I feel like it's just kind of a it's for licensed games, it's not that bad. I mean, I feel like the Wii was such a console for such shovelware and licensed games and like Hello Kitty Island Party and SpongeBob Battle for the Krusty Krab games where this is definitely a substantially better and a more fun game than anything in that category would have been for me. So I say it's again, if you're in a GameStop and they have it on the shelf for $8, and the box is the original box, grab it, laugh at the game, have some fun, reflect on the old Poker Pros of those years, and so definitely as far as a sequel goes, I think it's a successful sequel and that it takes the core game and makes it a bit better. And it was released on other consoles too, so you could play it on PC or something like that. I guess maybe if you have an old enough PC, and the PC mode did have an online multiplayer mode, the Wii does not. So I guess in theory it could have been a pretty fun time for some multiplayer action back in the day.
Yeah, a 3 out of 5 feels appropriate. Again, this isn't like an all-time classic, oh my God game. But yeah, as far as sequels go, it's sort of like Dark Knight Rises tier.
Oh, shots fired. So anyway, guys, so moving on to the other half of our sequel equation here is we have the Big Game on Tour Season 2. Now, we did not know this until we were mid-watch, but I guess they were going to have 3 loose cannon sets of episodes for Season 2. We only have access right now as of November 8th, 2025. They've only released the first 2 loose cannons, although the stakes in one of them kind of makes it kind of strange. I would have thought maybe the finale would have been the higher stakes. And so, as part of the releasing of this season, they actually had a auditions episode, which showed us a much more detailed, in-depth process of the selection of a loose cannon, kind of like an American Idol, where we see their interviews, what methods by which the judges critique them to, and then the gradual narrowing down of the contestants to the top 3 best loose cannon candidates. And so this one released, I want to say just before they began releasing the other episodes in the middle of 2025. Only 24,000 views on YouTube, which, I was keeping an eye on the view count for this entire season because it definitely was a drastic step down from season 1 of the Big Game on Tour, and to a lesser extent also relevant, much fewer viewership than Game of Gold was as well. So it kind of comes in the back of my mind here. And it's called Finding the New Loose Cannon, narrated by Nick Walsh. Not sure who that is, but they did, whatever fine job narrating was not an issue. And so the 3 judges,
Mhm.
much like in true American Idol style, we have James Joe Stapleton, James Hardigan, and then Nadia Magnus does return in a as a sort of third headed monster here. And given that she was not used as a mentor for the loose cannons this time around, I guess they had to find something to use her for, so that was totally appropriate. And they had to pick 3 people out of 91 contestants here. And so I'll go to you, Sam, here. What was your take on how this entire sort of prequel episode was structured?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to mention is I watched this episode after watching the first five big games. So there's a little bit of an element of I knew who one of the loose cannons was going to be. So if you are going to watch this episode, I recommend you watch it before you watch any of the big games season two, because there is a lot of spoilers. And also, it spoils the loose cannon for season one. So you should probably watch season one before you watch this. But anyway, I'm always kind of interested by behind the scenes looks at things. The big game, it's like, oh, it's just six people sitting around a table playing poker. What could be so complicated about that? But there is a lot of thought that goes into this, right? I mean, you have 91 people auditioning for three spots. You really need to take some time getting the field down. And I've talked before about how, I don't find Joe Stapleton the most humorous person in the world. I think his shtick is a little lame, to be honest. So it's kind of nice to see a different side to him, to see him be a little bit calmer, a little bit more cerebral, making interesting decisions about who should go on. Same with James and Nadia. They both, all three of them strike me as pretty cool customers. They seem pretty smart. Narrowing different options down. So I guess round one is pretty simple. It's each of the 91 contestants comes up, has to explain who they are, why they should be the next loose cannon in about a minute. We see a lot of different clips from different people, as you might imagine, with 91 contestants. People being nervous, some people not being so nervous, some people having a shtick, other people just sort of being themselves. And so it's pretty clear like what each, Joe, James, and Nadia want. Nadia wants somebody with an attitude, but she does want somebody also who is charming and, has a sort of story behind them. And Joe and James are sort of cut from the same cloth. They kind of want to see some personality, but they also kind of want to see somebody who's nice. There's a bit of a clash between Nadia, who wants somebody who's a bit more attitude, and then Joe and James maybe want sort of nicer people. And we see some people get rejected, and then obviously some people move on. And but I kind of like about this first part is you're not 100% sure who's going to be the final three. Like I feel like there's pretty even coverage across most of the contestants. Obviously, the people who were not allowed to continue on were obviously rejected. But from this point, you don't really know yet like who's going to make it to the end. And some of these people are actually very interesting. We have this woman, Jordan, who's an older woman who is a lawyer who had some health problems and unfortunately had to stop her career as a lawyer, but is interested in becoming a poker player. Has her, I guess, therapy dog or service dog, whatever you want to call it, with her, which obviously gets a lot of attention. I'm not a big dog fan, but it's kind of nice to see a dog there. And she comes off like a very, smart, charismatic person. Everyone loves her, and she moves on to the next round. So that was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, I don't know if you recognize her, but Louise Francoeur, she was in a couple main events that we've looked at. She made it deep in 2016. She was one of the last ladies standing. She was at the Kassouf table with Gordon Veo during the like nine high bluff two gate. And also
Yeah.
she was on the TV table with Phil Hellmuth in day one of 2017. So I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. It kind of reminded me of Lily Newhouse being a player we had seen in a deep main event run from years past. Ironically, right after 2015, which is when she made the deep run for Newhouse, kind of funny. And then yeah, we had a very, very, very nervous guy, Luke Moy, who was the very first interview shown. Basically, just totally blow his interview, but I guess salvage it enough to warrant returning for round two, which is kind of funny. And again, it's kind of like an elevator, like a 1 minute elevator pitch where you have to explain who you are and why you deserve to be picked. And again, it's kind of strange because it's this weird disconnect between are you a good poker loose cannon or are you like a good just like personality to be on TV? And I feel like obviously this wasn't the round to sort of get ahead of the poker side of things, but also remembering that to even qualify to be one of the 91 candidates, they had to have played in a tournament and accumulated a certain number of chips to qualify to move on. So I guess that sort of was supposed to handle the poker side of things. I suppose we just didn't get to see that in action personally. But anyway, so as you said, yeah, Jordan definitely stood out as one of the more interesting players, and that actually probably jumps up another notch for her when it comes to round two, which is where the final 27 people have to play two truths and a bluff, which allows them to put on a little bit of their acting and a little bit of their creativity chops, where they have to come up with, like the name suggests, two truths about themselves and a lie. And it's not game over if you don't trick the judges if they can tell which one's which, but it's more about just sort of can you come across well during this game.
Yeah, I like that it's not about if they detect the lie, then you're eliminated. It's about telling stories and showing your personality and what you come up with. They bring back Nikki Limo to introduce this game to the contestants, and everyone kind of gets excited about it. And yeah, like it is interesting and fun to hear all these different stories. Jordan talks about how, or one of her claims at least, is that she took pilot classes, and so they asked her, okay, like what did you fly? And she goes, jets? I don't know. And so they all think, oh, okay, you're lying. And it turns out that that was actually the truth and that she had bluffed them by saying, oh, I don't know, which I thought was really clever. Yeah, like just kind of, and they're all having fun with it too, right? I mean, obviously in the first round, you're a bit nervous. Some people aren't used to public speaking. You've got a bunch of cameras on you. This time around, it really feels like everybody had warmed up a little bit, had calmed down a little bit, and they were just sort of having fun with this, crazy game, which is nice. But again, as you mentioned, as really, you could say, okay, bluffing people in poker, bluffing people at the table, and as well as table talk. This has nothing really to do with formal poker skills, right? So, do they care more about getting good personalities on television, or how much are they really evaluating and valuing poker prowess or not? And I understand, again, like you're making a television show, you want to have crazy personalities, but this is a poker show fundamentally, right? If you were casting a season of Survivor, you wouldn't cast somebody who's completely hopeless and would get voted out on day one. You're looking for somebody who's going to make it to the end. Um, so I think there should be a little bit more of an emphasis on poker at this point.
But at the same time, I did feel that this round was probably the most successful round of the three rounds in this episode as far as giving us any sense of a player's potential to be a loose cannon. I thought the other two rounds were pretty fluffy, kind of not all that helpful or were kind of redundant. Like if it was up to me, I would have redone this entire process. I would have had maybe even be this to be 2 episodes long, and you would have had maybe we see the rounds, the players, and maybe we flash back to them playing poker and what brought them to this point in the selection process. That way, we got more of the poker of them, so that if they laid an egg on on the actual game, then at least we saw them play some good poker beforehand, and maybe we could with this many players, you have a lot of footage we probably could capture to draw some analogs between this answer and this moment at this table during this game. So obviously, that's a lot to ask when they want to just get to the nitty-gritty, and obviously the view count here suggests that people just care about the actual poker itself. But again, that's just me kind of playing the what if game for that. But the only weird editing thing I thought that round two did wrong was that they had a flashback to round one for a guy that was not shown during the first third of the episode before his round two. But
Mhm.
I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just put that together in the right order? And it didn't really add much to the episode personally, and just felt kind of out of place.
Yeah, that was a little weird. It wasn't like a huge deal, but I
Right,
thought that
just
was
a small little
strange.
nitpick, yeah. And then of
Mhm.
course that brings us down to the final nine. They have to be like, well, I really like this person, but I didn't love their round this time. So what do I do? And there's not really like any arguments or any drama between the three judges trying to select people. We more or less know that Jordan's a lock to make it to round three at least at this point after her performance, which I thought was probably the best one if you asked me as far as how it all stood out to me watching the clips we did see. But then round three with nine players left, Luis Francoeur, still in there, actually. I was a little surprised that we didn't really see any of her in round one or two, really, at this point. And so I was kind of rooting for her because we kind of knew her left Lily Newhouse, even if it kind of went against what a loose can to me should be. And then the round three criteria is probably just kind of the most forgettable. It's like playing the what if game, like, oh, what if you have a straight flush draw on the flop? Are you going to go all in or not? And it's such a loaded question that I feel like it's just like a poor barometer of a loose cannon's potential because of that. And then also asking how would you celebrate a big river win? Like I don't know. I feel like that you wouldn't even if you asked them in this sort of canned environment on the stage here. That's not going to be how they celebrate when they're playing against Jennifer Tilly or whatever whoever else they're playing against. Just yeah, it just felt like kind of a miss for me this round.
Yeah, I mean, you do say that it was kind of a loaded question. Nadia asked about the combo draw, but there are some people who say that they would go all in. Other people would say that they would fold. And it was actually kind of an interesting discussion after, they showed the clips of the nine contestants of some people being like, well, I said that I should fold. And then, oh, well, I said I should call. And there's sort of like a little back and forth among the contestants in the green room, I guess. That was kind of interesting to watch. But yeah, I mean, role playing a hand against Phil Hellmuth where, you spike a king on the river and you beat him. Of course, everyone's like, oh my God, suck it, Phil, you suck, things like that. I mean, of course, that's what you're going to do, right? Like, I probably to be different, knowing that that's what people would do, I would try to be like more shocked to be like, oh my God, but Phil, I'm such a big fan, Phil, come back. I know I'm a nit. I would do something like that to try to stand out. Um, But yeah, like it's kind of all the same. Everyone sort of freaks out, so to speak. And then they're trying to build up a little bit of tension. Like they'll show clips of Joe James and Nadia being like, "Oh, this guy really disappointed me, but I really liked this guy. Oh, I don't know about her. Maybe we should go with him instead." To try to like hype it up. As I mentioned, like toward the beginning of the episode, there was enough, even enough edit that I feel like I didn't quite know who's going to be selected. But by the end, you know that Jordan's going to be selected because she has a lot of screen time. You also know that Luke, the nervous guy, is going to be selected because he's getting a lot of screen time. With the third choice, I wasn't really quite sure who it would be. I thought it could be a couple different people. But I mean, I was ultimately fine with it. The other guy who was chosen was this guy, also named Luke, who had like a plaid shirt on.
Yeah.
And it was kind of sweet to see the three of them reacting and, hugging, Joe, James, and Nadia. And, they're shown afterward, the three of them sort of gathered together outside and they're like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Like that was really sweet because this is a big opportunity for a lot of people. And so it's kind of nice that they own that a little bit. But yeah, I wish that the third round was a bit more substantial. Like maybe if like each of the three of them came up with a role playing scenario, like Nadia has the combo draw, then James has the Phil Hellmuth hand, then Joe's like, what if you got bluffed by Jennifer Tilly or something? Like, what would your reaction be? That might make it a little bit more distinct. And give the contestants time to role play. Like actually, like you are in the middle of this hand, like beat for beat, street for street. You're going to act out what's going on. That might be a little bit more intricate and provide some more diverse material there.
Yeah, and again, with only 52 minutes to cover this whole thing, it's a little bit rushed. I mean, I would have liked to have seen it a bit more spread out so we could have more suspense, but at the same time, we're here for the poker, not for the audition process. And again, we got like a little mini clip of it in Nikki Limo and to a lesser extent Lily Newhouse's episodes when they did their run. So this obviously gave us more context for what brought them to this point. I actually, unlike you, I saw the first two episodes for Jordan before watching the audition episode because it was kind of in the playlist on YouTube for the PokerStars channel, kind of in a funny spot. So I didn't know to watch it beforehand until after the fact. So I knew Jordan was going to make it. So that was the only part that was spoiled for me of sorts. But at the same time, they do show her audition process in her first episode anyway, so I had already seen a lot of her highlights from there anyway, so it was kind of a rerun at that point. So as far as getting back a little bit to the sequel nature of this program here, so again, more episodes, so we're going to have 15 in total rather than just 10. And I guess to try to like add some more continuity. A lot of flashback clips are used to sort of draw into, Lex Veldhouse lost money last time. Will he, get revenge on the big game and have a profit, etc. And they do use some footage of the original run of the big game to add to the continuity of everything here. So again, it's kind of just like, business as usual, moving on. They attempt to add like a silly gimmick of sorts by giving each player a three big blind bomb pot card. So that means that each player gets one, including, and if you knock out a player, you steal their bomb pot card as well, ironically, but it's not really revealed until the very end. And so that means that everyone puts in their money, get two cards, deal up a flop, and then there you go. And also, if a new player joins a table mid-game, they also get a fresh card to do that. And for the most part, every player that uses it when they're on the button, which makes sense because you're under no restriction as to when you can use it, so you might as well do it when you have position. And again, it just felt like it just didn't amount to much. Like obviously, a few players maybe had bomb pot bad luck, bomb pot good luck, but it just felt like the game was more or less the exact same, whether that card was in play or not.
I didn't have a big problem with it. I mean, it does add, a little bit of something. It's kind of funny to see some players dread the bomb hot card and other players are more excited about it. Not a big deal, yeah. And I mean, yeah, in terms of the, the production design and everything, I mean, it's basically the same as season one. It seems to be the same set. I really like the way the set looks. I like that it's set at night. It, feels a little bit more intimate and classy. The original big game set I thought just seemed like a little tacky, a little overlit, a little sort of artificial and garish looking. This one looks more like, a poker, like an actual six people are coming to this poker table to play poker. And there's big screens when the bomb pot card is played, bomb pot is displayed on the screen. The winner at the end of the session, winner Jennifer Tilly is displayed on the screen. It's kind of nice. And then also there are people gathered behind the rail, sort of, family members of the people who are playing. There you mentioned how Nadia was a coach last time and she would stand behind the rail. She's not there anymore, which is kind of a shame. It had a little bit of something. It was also kind of funny to see her reactions to things. There's also a lot of footage of people waiting in the green room or going to the green room on break. Either players who are, perhaps going to step in if somebody's eliminated from the table, or just like people hanging out. Like Phil Locke is just in the green room hanging out, I guess, just to watch Jennifer Tilly or support her. I don't know. There's also just like a lot of footage shown of these players, like again, in between sessions, talking to each other, but the conversations are so brief. The clips are like not even 10 seconds long for the most part. So there's no real time to really like let things settle and see, how are players interacting with each other away from the table? Is there actual tension going on? Do they actually like each other or anything? A lot of the clips throughout this are very, very short. I mean, usually after every 2 or 3 hands, there's an interview clip, but it's so short and it's so insubstantial. I would think it could be cut out of the show entirely. It's just something like, oh yeah, that hand was really crazy, and it's on to the next hand. Oh my God, tension is building, then it's on to the next hand. Again, I don't have a problem with interviews every couple of hands as long as there's something substantial, and or if the player is talking about themselves in detail. There's a couple of nice interviews where there is somebody who talks a little bit in detail about their life and why they're playing poker and what they're bringing to the table. Those moments work okay, but just so many. Like, I mean, just in the first episode, looking at my notes, I mean, I think there's at least like 6 or 7 different, interview clips in just every 2 or 3 hands. And then it takes 5 minutes for the actual poker action to start. In episode one, that's okay because you have to introduce the players, introduce the loose cannon. But in every single episode, it takes over 5 minutes sometimes for the actual poker action to start because they do this little like check in with each player at the beginning. But again, the clips are so short. It's just, oh boy, I lost some money last session. I hope I win this time. It's like, yeah, go figure. It's just ridiculous how long it takes to get the poker action started.
Yeah, and I know some folks might complain, well, why don't you just skip ahead? But this is the thing, that these episodes are kind of produced as if they were going to be on TV. They're like natural ad breaks in these videos. So I think it's totally fair to judge them by that basis. Because if this was just like, in season one, they had the Just the Hands videos they made after the season was done. And, if that's a totally separate, like a artificially made YouTube-ified edit for this stuff. This is not, this is produced as if you're watching it like, once a week on TV and everything. And the problem of this is that it was less of an issue in episode one. Episode one, they did a pretty good job. They didn't have any post-mortems for a hand. It was more about interviews with the player about the player. But then once you kind of got past that fake sort of, oh, we're going to do things differently this time, thought process you might originally have, the problem is that they'll show a hand, then they'll do like a really brief post-mortem for a hand. We're showing clips of things we just saw. Then it cuts to commercial, and then they recap that hand again. Maybe have another interview in there, and then it takes up like this happened at least twice, maybe 3 times an episode, and it just really kills momentum. I mean, there's a lot of boring poker as is in these episodes as is, and this just only adds more problems. And this is an issue in season one, and I would have hoped that they would have learned their lesson. They would have maybe given us longer sound bits less often. But instead, they just double down on the exact same thing, and it makes for a sequel where it feels like they didn't learn from their mistakes from the first time around, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you look at these edited episodes and then you compare it to the Just the Hands episode, and you realize there's like 2 hours of content or something that's been cut out from these episodes into the Just the Hands stuff. It just goes to show how much repetition and how much recaps and how much filler is in this. Nobody's saying that you should show, all 150 hands. There's going to be some duds. There's going to be some walks in there. That's no problem. Though it would be interesting to see the raw footage and see all 150 hands. But anyway, like no one's saying that you have to show all of them, but you don't have to fill this much. If you don't have enough content to fill 5 episodes, then just make 4 or 3. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it's just very
And another
strange.
problem is that with all the recapping, like half of the recaps are like, oh, Jennifer Tilly was up $25,000 last time. Now she's only up $16,000. Like, who cares? I mean, this is very small stakes money. They kept the same limit, blind limits, asterisk though, for Jordan's table, where it was $50,000 staked to the loose cannon, and then everybody else buys in, usually for about that amount to begin with, at least. And there's some rebuys here and there, but again, this is small money for the most part for all these players, and the lineup here. I was actually like, it felt like a B team kind of lineup for the first table. So we have a few players I just didn't know, which doesn't mean that's a bad thing in my mind. It just means that I have, no expectations for what to expect. So the sort of like the big player that's like not a poker player, that sort of be like the secondary headline besides the loose cannon is this soccer player named Gerard Piqué, who again I've never heard of. I don't follow soccer. I played backyard soccer on the PC when I was 5 years old, and that was as much soccer knowledge as I really ever accumulated. And then we have a few players that were in season one, which I think is totally fine. Jennifer Tilly is usually pretty entertaining, and she does hold her own in this season pretty well. Griffin Benger again only was in like the last couple of hands in his table that he put in, so I was fine giving him a chance to shine. I was totally fine. And then Sam Grafton, who he's not my top pick to be on this table, but he's definitely does at least talk a fair amount, and I think he can be fun to watch. So I wasn't against their selections, I guess, but I've never heard of Andrea Kari before, and so I definitely was like, huh, he's apparently a big player. I just have never heard of him though, so I was a little concerned maybe he'd be kind of bland. And then we have, of course, Jordan as in the loose cannon spot. So again, I was kind of skeptical of this table to begin with, given that even though I think Benjer's a good player, he made the final table, the main event. 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and so he's got poker chops, and he's definitely, I think, matured a fair amount since his 2014, 2016 days, so that's good for him. But I definitely felt like we had our true loose cannon for the first time, if you ask me, like a loose cannon, we just didn't have maybe a great table to get a brand new season to get those juices flowing for me.
Yeah, I mean Jennifer Tilly's always great. She's got a lot of personality. She's a pretty good player. Sam Grafton, I know about less, but I also think has some good personality and is a good player. Griffin Benger, I'd say is sort of like half and half in terms of personality. Like he seems like an amicable guy. He banters with Sam Grafton a bit, but he's quiet for the most part, which is totally fine because then he's not annoying. He's not chatting his head off like I don't know, Will Cassou for somebody. And then yeah, Gerard Piqué was just a strange choice. This sort of Spanish soccer player who didn't show a whole lot of personality, and neither really did Andrea Kari. Andrea Kari played very tight, didn't really catch a lot of hands, wasn't really in a lot of the coverage, and that's again okay. Um, some nights you're just going to have an off night. You're not going to be super chatty. And again, if you have everybody talking all at once, it's hard to really focus on somebody and hear the banter. So, it's okay to be on the quieter side in this sort of thing. Jordan was, I'd say, again, sort of like Griffin Benger, kind of half and half, not super chatty. She talked a lot about her dog, of course, and, would engage in a little bit of banter in between hands, but actually, like, really doesn't do a whole lot in the first episode or really in, most of the episodes. We'll, get into particulars as time goes on. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a strange lineup. We're going to be starting this season. Here we go. We have a Spanish soccer player who most of the Americans probably have never heard of, and Andrea Kari, who most people have never heard of, and Griffin Benger, who's best known for saying "check your privilege." So it's sort of just a weird way to start this. I mean, the second lineup, which we'll get into later, I mean, I really think they should have flipped the two around, had the second lineup been first, and then had this on the back half.
Well, I can almost understand why they didn't have the second table loose cannon first. But as far as the actual players at the table besides loose cannon, I totally agree with you there. And regarding as far as Jordan as like a loose cannon, I mean, so she does win the second hand of the table. Okay, great. So she starts off things on a good note. But it's a raise and take when she has kings. And it just kind of speaks to how this was like, I felt like the lowest money stakes episode in big game history. Like nobody bought above the 50K starting stack. The pots were very tiny. And Jennifer Tilly, even though she ran like God the whole episode, was only up like $41,000. So it's like, this is not life-changing money for any player at the table. And there was arguably a decent amount of non-poker material, like we saw the audition process, the intro sequence first time I thought was fine. Her fake pause of the jet question was again a great moment for me. This is my first time seeing her in any facet when I watched the first time. But again, with I guess from the perspective of the European poker audience, I guess maybe PK is a big deal to some of the people there. But this episode only had 151,000 views, so clearly, the title "PK Gets No Mercy from the Queen of Poker" didn't really do much for the title baits audience there. And really, just for me, it was the most boring mid 5 out of 10 episode we've really ever had. Like this is an emblematic of the 5 out of 10, grading scale for me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the, a little bit of things here and there. Like, James and Joe are riding in a limo and they're talking about the season. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. Again, I like the way the set looks. I like all that. I heard Jordan's dog's name as being Herman the Murmur Floofington. It turns out that that's not the dog's name. It's Carmen Murder Floofington. There's a graphic in episode 2 that shows that. So that was kind of funny. I was watching the whole episode. I'm like, Herman the Murmur Floofington? What's that? But yeah, I mean, Jennifer Tilly gets in, a couple fun lines here and there, but nothing really in episode 1. Nothing in terms of the poker play. There's no sick runouts or anything. Everybody seems to be having a good time. Everybody seems to like each other. I'm happy that they're having a good experience, but nothing really here to sink your teeth into. A 5 out of 10 feels appropriate.
Also with Jordan, that first 30 hands, the first batch, that's when the loose cannon is probably the most stressed at first, but then the
Mhm.
mechanics of can I make a profit don't really matter until maybe like the back third of the hand. So I kind of wanted to see her sort of be a bit more outgoing and more verbose at the table because when you're, not up or down, you're kind of more level-headed emotionally speaking, hopefully, and maybe that enables them to be. But I really didn't feel like we got much of what would have made her, a top three candidate in the auditions in so far from what we had seen her at the table.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Episode two, I thought was it made episode one look like Citizen Kane. It just was a total boring episode. Those awful post-mortem recaps, commercial break recaps returned. They somehow knew not to put that in episode one. They fooled me into believing that maybe those were going to be gone forever, and unfortunately they came back. And the problem also was I don't mind the postmortems if the analysis is very detailed. Scott Seaver, Negreanu, a couple of minds that I really respect their poker game, and if it had been them explaining their thought process, I would have really liked to have heard their thoughts on a certain hand. But like when Jen Tully's like, "Well, I hate being bluffed, and I just want to win a big hand, so I didn't fold my ace high." Like I just don't care. I want to hear about that. I mean, give me some juicy poker logic. Nobody at this table's game I particularly respect at that high level. Therefore, I don't care how they play the hand really in retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a count of the number of hands that was in this episode. There's 13 hands that are shown in this episode, none of which are very substantial. There's no crazy runouts like I mentioned, no crazy bluffs. The action kind of the hands basically play themselves. It makes sense what's going on. Okay, so nobody's really acting out of line. Nobody is sucking egregiously, but again, nothing super exciting. I don't understand why these 13 hands were shown out of the 30 hands that could have been here. And as I mentioned, it takes over 5 minutes for there to actually be the first hand because we have to go through all the players one by one. And again, very basic stuff like, once you're up in chips, you have to start thinking about preserving your stack. Oh, you got to be careful with your hands, things like that. Um, Nothing in terms of banter that really, grabs my attention. Grafton tries to sort of like have a conflict with PK over soccer or whatever. We learn a little bit about Benjer's Counter-Strike career. Like probably my favorite moment of this episode is Benjer talking about Counter-Strike, and then it cuts to a car. He's like, "Oh yeah, that guy from Counter-Strike. He's playing poker with me." That was kind of cute, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Jennifer Tilly was fascinated by this like brown chip in her stack. I don't know. Like yeah.
I mean, Tilly had a few okay, funny lines in episode one. I don't think she really did for the rest of the table. There was a bomb pot where PK got felted by Tilly's set, which I guess was the biggest pot money-wise up to that point. But really, besides that, some of these bomb pots were just very ho-hum hands where the only one player flops anything and they just bet and everyone folds. I mean, Jordan did win the first bomb pot of the game, which was fine. So she was accumulating a very small but important profit. But all of that progress went out the window when she gets coolered when a straight loses to Sam Grafton straight, and then she's down to
Mhm.
20,000 chips just like that, which is again pretty horrible. I mean, I feel like you can be down, but you want to avoid being under 25K because that way at least one double up you're in profit, Phil. So that's really kind of a letdown. And again, the only thing that really separates the big game on tour from any cash game show is the loose cannon element. And so when she's down, I don't. It's not always a bad thing if a loose cannon's down money. Like I can still be entertained, but it does take out some of the fire in me as a viewer when a player is playing so tight and so ABC and is down that much.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny to see the other players at the table feel kind of guilty about the loose cannon because it's kind of interesting. Like $100,000 they're buying in for, it's not a big deal for them. But for the loose cannon, I mean, even just winning $10,000 can change your entire life. So it
Yes.
is kind of funny to see that dynamic a little bit. And again, they all like each other. They're all having fun. I'm not trying to take away from this experience, but yeah, like just really nothing in this episode really worthwhile. And yeah, good point that you made about the bomb pot card. I mean, I really have to wonder what they were thinking introducing that as a gimmick because, okay, it adds a little bit of intrigue, I guess. But yeah, I mean, most of the time when you play a bomb pot card, you have 8-3 offsuit or queen six, and whoever bets first wins. It's just kind of hands playing themselves. So if they're going to have a gimmick for season three or whatever, don't do a bomb pot card. Do I don't know. You can play this card and take change a card on the flop or something. I don't know. Do something like that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, again, it just to me it was a very boring episode. And again, it's just really low stakes. Like it just felt like I don't really care if I also the players themselves, their gameplay was just very uninteresting. Like I feel like Sam Grafton maybe tried the hardest out of everybody at the table, but then Gentili would just run the best out of the whole table, and Akari just sort of spent the whole table folding for the most part. So it just wasn't much in the way of a rivalry. Like I think back to season one, Alan Keating at least brought a unique spin on things. Helmuth was very entertaining. There was just some select players in the first season that were very good, and at least getting me to pay attention. And this table was just a total snoozeville by comparison to even some of the mediocre action of season one. And things, to my surprise, so if the view count, they gradually increased from episode one to two and two to three. So episode three, entitled "Amateurs on a Heater," all caps, got to 189,000 views, which was the most out of any episode in season two so far. I wonder if it'll maintain that number, honestly. And unfortunately, this for me was maybe even more boring than episode two was, where I felt like every single hand was just so lame, where everyone just, it's all these two bet folds or flop bets, take it down on the flop, or just some really boring stuff. And we had a yet another flashback to Jordan's two truths and a bluff game for some reason. So that's now shown a third time if you're watching these episodes audition first. It just was boggling. And even when Jordan wins a hand, it's with small pots. And so it just for me it failed at every level.
Yeah, I mean, when you say somebody goes on a heater, like you'd expect them to win $40,000 or something. But yeah, she gets ace king, raises, folds around. She gets kings, three bet, folds around. Then she gets kings again, and the flop comes out with two aces. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. She's going to win this hand. Jennifer Tilly's involved, so Jordan will win a bunch of money. But then Jennifer Tilly leads out for 1,000 and Jordan folded. And I was just shocked by that. I'm like, what? Like, I'm a very tight player. I'm probably raising in that spot. I don't know. But like, I was just so surprised to see that. And then really just doesn't have really anything going for really the rest of her time on the show. I mean, I think folding those kings, the poker gods are just like, okay, now you're not going to win a profit. Um, and yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, what is there to really hang your hat on in terms of the banter? It's kind of funny to see PK be done with the bomb pot cards, sort of like the straight men and the foil, Tilly and Grafton are sort of, they're more animated. And so it's kind of, PK just be like, I'm so done with the bomb pots, it was kind of funny, I guess. Um, but beside that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we learned a little bit more about Akari being, the second Brazilian to win a bracelet. Jennifer Tilly talks about her acting career drying out. I mean, I'm really drawing a blank to think of like a viral moment to grab from this episode.
Yeah, I thought this episode was perhaps the worst one of the Big Game on Tour so far, honestly. I thought it was just so horrible. And I think clearly the internet thought the same way because episode four, entitled in all caps, Elimination Time, has only 50,000 views. So almost barely over a quarter of the last episode. And I was just surprised because, Elimination Time, I guess, could be considered a spoiler for the loose cannon losing, or it could just be like multiple players busting, but then why would you call it Elimination Time? And like that. But I was just surprised because every other hand besides besides Jordan's pocket tens hand, excuse me, Jack's hand, was just so forgettable. And I was actually surprised that I also didn't even care for the player that took her seat afterwards. We'll get to in a moment. But it just was another bad episode. And even though peak like PK gradually bounced back. I don't really care. I mean, he's a rich soccer player. I don't care if he's. I mean, again, it's just such small stakes money for these players that can easily afford this money that it's hard to really care about. Oh, they were up 10,000, now they're down 10,000, now they're up 10,000. It just doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I mean, in this first part of the episode, with Jordan ultimately busting, there's really nothing of consequence until Jordan winds up busting, and it's again just a very strange hand. I mean, Akari, as we've mentioned, he's sort of been the tight player, been fairly quiet, really hasn't said very much. He picks up queens, raises to 700. Jordan picks up jacks, makes it 2.6, and then Akari makes it 8. So, I mean, yeah, pocket jacks is a strong hand and all that, but Akari had been playing so tight. I would be folding the jacks there. I mean, is he doing that with ace king, even ace king suited, really? I mean, and do you want to take a flip in that spot, playing for this much money? I mean, I wouldn't do it. He's probably doing that with queens, kings, or aces. But Jordan ultimately decides to go all in. They run it 4 times, and she busts and is eliminated. And this is like the halfway point of the episode. I mean, not even. So I was like, very surprised to be like, wow, she's gone this early into the episode. And the player who shows up is Jonathan Tamayo. I wrote 5 question marks next to his name when I saw him pop up. And I also made this face. I wanted to take a photograph of it, but I couldn't quite hold it. Just this face of like him of all people. Like, why Jonathan Tamayo? I mean, you have Phil Locke waiting in the green room. Why don't you have him come in? Like anybody. Like, why not pick Ben? Why not pick me instead of Jonathan Tamayo? It made no sense to me at all.
Well, I actually wasn't against Tamayo being there, but I'm against him being there if he's going to play zero hands, which is what he does. I mean, having a recent main event champion, I'm fine with that. It'd be nice to maybe hear a few more sound bites about him. We don't really know him too well, because you only hear so much from the main event coverage about him. I mean, know from '09 we made the final 3 tables or whatever. So I was fine if I got to know him better, but he doesn't play any hands, which means we don't get to hear how he plays a hand. And so it was, I was okay with, I was surprised. I was like, oh, did not expect to see Tamayo. So it was not a negative at first for me, like it was for you perhaps, but it became a negative after the next episode.
Well, let me explain why it's a negative. It's just his controversy, right? I mean, everybody thinks of him as the cheater who won the main event by looking at a bunch of laptops and wasn't, the most super personable guy in the world. So I just think it's kind of strange that of anybody you could choose, you pick him. I mean,
Well,
picking Jordan Griff might have been really interesting. And you read the comment section. I mean, it's one of the funniest comment section on this episode and episode 5. Everybody just being like, "Oh my God, you picked Tamayo. He has no personality. He cheated his way into the main event title." So I mean, just on like a PR and optics level, I don't understand why they picked him. I don't hate Jonathan Tamayo. I don't think he cheated per se. He was within the rules to use his laptops as he used the laptops at the main event. They've obviously introduced a new rule to change that. Is it bad gamesmanship? Perhaps. Yes, I think it is. But he won his main event fairly. He seems like an okay guy, not super personable, but he's not punching people at the poker table or anything. He's not stalling unnecessarily. But yeah, it's just sort of strange choice optically to pick him. And then yeah, as you mentioned, really just doesn't get anything going. I mean, he was only around for so long. There weren't enough opportunities for him to pick up hands, but just very strange to have him in the coverage at all. And it kind of makes me wonder. I mean, if the loose cannon busts so early, should you even really continue the table? Shouldn't you just kind of like shut it down after that point? Because, the loose cannon is what brings people to the show, right? I don't want to watch an entire episode and a half without the loose cannon. I mean, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. It's okay if they bust toward the end of the last episode and there's like 10 hands left, then I can imagine playing it out. But with over 30 hands left, I mean, I think you should just kind of have like a rule to just kind of shut it down.
or just have an unwritten rule. We're going to edit it so that it seems as if it was like the last hand or last two
Mhm.
hands. Because you can just say, oh, this is hand number 147, and it really was like one hand, one hand 127. Who really cares? There were a couple of interview bits that attempted to give some personality to Akari and PK. PK ranking soccer players as poker players, but when you don't know the players that he's talking about, it doesn't really matter to me how he ranks them. And then Akari talks about his esports team, which again, esports is another sort of facet of life that I'm not too privy about, so I'm not against hearing more about that. But again, it's just a brief bit that it's hard to really to care too much. And I do like that they gave Jordan a exit interview, but I don't feel like I didn't buy the whole idea of playing in this game gave me confidence. I mean, you were playing so tight and so poorly that this shouldn't give you any confidence, if, really. And if you ask me, I mean, I think it's trying to glamorize like playing poker as this massive life altering experience. But all you did was you lost a chance to win some money. I mean, I'm not sure how confident I'd be after that personally.
Yeah, she seems like a nice person. She has an interesting life story, but I mean, I didn't see anything from this that really suggests she has any real poker talent. I'm sorry. I mean, really just folding the kings. I mean, I think that was such an egregious error. I don't think Jennifer Tilly has an ace in that spot. Yeah, and just, nothing else that really grabbed my attention. Again, you're a loose cannon, you're not super experienced, but she did talk about in her interviews how she's been crushing all these tournaments. And so when you then follow it up with a performance like this, it just doesn't really jive well. But it seems like she had a good time, so good for her. But I wish her the best. I want to be clear, I wish her the best.
I mean,
But
even in the
yeah,
old big game, there were some loose cannons that were very impressive and mixed things up and were very successful. I think Gonzo Cannon was really good, for example. There were a few loose cannons that were aggressive, didn't just play, pocket tens or better. And obviously, with this table here, I felt this was maybe a loose cannon's best lineup to maybe do something. I mean, Telly is a solid player, but I feel like she's still not at the level of tougher competition that could exist in this game. And PK is an amateur, and I feel like Akari, given how tight he was playing, you could exploit that a little bit. So, this is probably set up as well as any loose cannon lineup really would ever be for somebody to do well.
yeah, absolutely.
And I also would have liked, I mean, obviously you can kind of assume things, but I would have liked to have heard more about her thought process playing the jacks in that fashion. I mean, I get that the number of hands was winding down and you can't just be folding, but I feel like the order of which the raising pre-flop was that she had put little enough money in the pot to get away from her hand properly. Like, I feel like if she had been the one to put 8K in, okay, maybe you can't fold there, but she'd only invested 2,600 dollars or whatever it was. She still had enough
Mhm.
chips, I think, to reasonably spin it up if she had folded the jack, or even just flat the raise. I mean, I mean, I know it's a little cowardly at times, but at least flat the raise, and then if the flop comes big cards, you can still fold and keep yourself alive there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, so again, the sort of the deflating episode 5 here entitled "Can PK Come Back in Final Round?" As if anyone really cares, did actually do a bit better in the view count, back up to 106,000. So I guess maybe the title just sort of scared people away, or maybe just having the word PK in there, they thought would do the trick, which I guess you could argue it did do the trick for the first episodes, given that they were over 150,000 apiece. But once again, it's just some, I guess with more chips on the table than episodes past, the pots are marginally bigger. But I mean, Tamayo doesn't play a hand the whole episode essentially, besides bomb pot basically. And Grafton does up his aggression now that he has had 120 plus hands to analyze the table. So I feel like maybe he was trying to play a little bit harder, which worked out for him, I guess. But at the same time, I thought it was just a very poor finale to this action.
Yeah, nothing really much to hang your hat on. It is kind of funny that Jennifer Tilly didn't recognize Jonathan Tamayo because she was off doing Chucky while he was playing the main event. That was a little bit funny, I guess. Beside that, yeah, I don't really see any big moments or big hands or anything. It kind of felt like, again, with the loose cannon gone, they were just kind of like, all right, we got to just get through this action. We don't care as much about this episode. We'll just do it. There was a little bit more poker action I felt in this episode in comparison to the previous episode. So I'm a bit appreciative of that. There was a little bit less filler. Obviously, toward the end, they have sort of closing interviews. Everyone's like, I had a really great time. The big game is such an institution. I want to come back, things like that. That stuff's okay. It's, you kind of have to do that toward the end. I understand that. Jennifer Tilly gets quads. That was a little fun, I guess. But yeah, just kind of it's a fitting close to what this batch of episodes was. Just nothing that's like egregiously terrible, but just like for the most part, nobody really gets anything going. No real dynamics from the table surface. There's, enough moments of Tilly and Grafton, bantering and chirping at each other that, it's entertaining on a marginal level. But, you need to have a really good loose cannon. You need to have somebody who's a good player and has a lot of personality. And we just didn't quite get that. And, having a fifth episode with no loose cannon at all just really feels underwhelming.
And if I had not seen the audition episode of Jordan, I would have thought that she was just a total train wreck of a loose cannon as far as just not being particularly, you know, a strong presence at the table at all. And obviously her poker was, subpar as well. The bomb pots universally were a huge letdown here. Jennifer Tilly was just kind of up the whole game, and it just was a matter of how much was she up the whole game. Oh, she was up 40K
Mhm,
here,
mhm.
50K here, oh, 42K here, 70K. It's just she didn't have much of a narrative really. Even so, the constant recapping was very silly. Grafton was down a bit and came up, and Benger and Grafton were kind of seesawing up and down a bit, but really PK and Akari were down the whole game, and Jordan was down for most of the game. So there wasn't much in the way of like crazy. Like I remember Arden Cho was down big and then came back and won big. So again, that was at least the delta of the players peak low and peak high in the action. Was very small by comparison to season one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we get to the lineup number two. This one with Luke Moy, the nervous first auditioner in the audition episode, and we learned at this before this game began that of the three loose cannons, one would be given a double buy-in, so a table with double the blinds and double the starting stake. So it's the same blind structure as the original big game. So we're talking $100,000 and 200, 400. And I was a little put off by the fact that, wait, no, this would be kind of a good like season finale vibe where you're escalating because it's going to be kind of a drag to go back to the third table and have it be cut in half of the stakes.
Yeah, they should just have it be 100K, I think. I don't think they should have it be 50K. And if you want to have it be 200K as a little surprise, that'd be okay. But yeah, I was kind of just weirded out by it. I mean, as you mentioned, the stakes were so low during the first batch that it affected the action. So, this being 100K, it is a welcome return to form and that okay, there's a little bit more money at stake. The swing's going to be bigger, so you're kind of curious to see how things will go from there.
And it definitely felt that this lineup, even not only was the pots bigger, but it felt like they were bigger relative to the stakes than the chips were. So, for example, with double the money on the table, the pots were definitely more than double in size on average. So at least they got a bit more of an aggressive table. Of course, Alan Keating, the biggest wild card of the entire big game on tour, if you ask me, was back buying in for the full $500,000 maximum. Then we had Jason Kuhn, Lex Veldhaus, Alexander Wolfgang, Morgan J, and then Luke. Obviously, I've never heard of Wolfgang or Jay before, so they were kind of like the Akari and PK spots on this table. I know Lex Veldhaus from his epic day one episode in the main event of bluffing everybody all day long, and obviously he appeared in all those poker cash game shows over the years, including the Big Game on Tour season one and the Big Game original Big Game. And Kuhn, a great player. We knew him on Game of Gold. I was excited to see him play, but he again kind of felt like Akari in that he was kind of playing passive until maybe the very end of the whole table, and even then it wasn't all that exciting. And then with this episode number six here called Raising the Stakes, the view count definitely jumped a bit back up, this time to 178,000 views. So clearly the internet thought that there was some potential here for some good poker action. And for sure, the lineup here was much scarier for our loose cannon here. And so I definitely felt that this could be another example, maybe a cannon that goes busto, but right before the action began. And really, for me, it would come down to how that first episode went for him.
Yeah, basically the same thoughts that you just offered. I mean, Keating, Veilhouse, and Kuhn, we'd heard of them before. I think, all three of them are pretty solid players. Yeah, Wolfgang apparently is a poker YouTuber. I've literally never heard of him before
Yeah.
this. So I don't know how many subscribers he has or anything, but, not a bad guy by any means, but I've never heard of him. And then Morgan J, I'd also never heard of before. He's very, very big on TikTok. He's like a stand-up comic musician type, sort of like Adam Sandler. He has a ukulele and he'll pull it out and he'll just play it. Has this like very sort of strange singing voice, and that it sounds like he has auto tune. It turns out like part of his act is like he has like an auto tune microphone. So I think he just sort of does the voice so that the auto tune sounds correct or something. I don't know. Well, obviously he has a lot of moments throughout the action. We'll talk about them more. So yeah, I mean, poor Luke. I mean, you're going up against, Keating, who loves, big swings and big pots, Velas and Kuhn, who are pretty solid, and then, Wolfgang and Jagan are sort of more amateurs. But I mean, Keating buys in for the full 500K. Imagine going to the table and you just look to your left and here's Alan Keating with all these chips. And like right off of the first hand, I mean, is raising, is playing any two cards, really putting on the action, really putting on a show too. I mean, this was immediately more entertaining and more interesting than anything that had happened in the first 5 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Keating, he basically wins the first like 6 or 7 hands, I think, on the edit, just by with aggression. And he not only would play only two cards, he would just never fold to a re-raise. So because he has the stack to cover the whole table. And so for me, if I'm a loose cannon, that's kind of a disaster because you really want to kind
Mhm.
of win some of that easy free money. Where if I'm three betting, I want there to be at least some chance that the two betters gonna fold. It's not. It's okay if they have worse cards, obviously, but you want that to be in. You want some fold equity to be definitely on the table for sure. And with a guy like Alan, playing every hand, Luke does manage to win the first bomb pot. And it's a common thread throughout this table is that the idea is he wants to win money to be able to pay for his wedding to his girlfriend, who's in the stands watching with him, watching for him. And so, obviously, I know that's compared to Lily Newhouse's wanting just to buy a new pool. It's a bit more of a rooting interest for me, I suppose. But I do feel like, again, much like Jordan, he just didn't have too much spark at the table as far as engaging. It felt like more people would engage him in a sentence or a conversation, and he'd respond to them rather than him being the one initiating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I obviously with Keating, I mean, raising every, raising 5x with, five deuce off. As a tight player, I would find that very restrictive. Though, I could try to find maybe a couple spots here and there. And also, for the most part, he was just kind of card dead. It seems like he got a lot of sort of middling hands, especially toward the back half of his time. But yeah, in terms of his personality, like, he just kind of smile at people and make like one-off comments with his British accent. There was a very sort of sweet rapport between Veldhouse and Moy. Like Veldhouse would kind of like turn to him and give him a little bit of advice or give him a little bit of a pep talk, be like, "Oh, it's not a bad, thing if you get bluffed. It's going to happen to you," which I thought was really sweet. But yeah, like really throughout these 5 episodes, it's Keating versus Veldhouse, the two of them just jousting with each other. Keating would sometimes win, Veldhouse would sometimes win. They would try to bluff each other. One of them would, hit a river card and beat the other one. Just like really intense poker action. And, they try to hype up a rivalry at the beginning, like, oh, these two have squared off against each other. And this is one of those times where like there really was like a rivalry and a dynamic between the two of them. They never got disrespectful or anything. But like, yeah, it was really, really fun to watch these two guys just square off against each other. And if it made Moy a little bit more uncomfortable and a little bit more reticent, that's a shame. But I mean, this really was a lot of fun to watch.
I would say of this entire season two, that's the strongest element across the board is just the Keating versus Veldhouse rivalry. Although I felt like by the end of this table, it kind of ran a little worn because that was all that was really going on besides the Morgan J songs by the end. But again, still better than part one for sure to start off with. And then in episode seven, it was at this point where I really realized just how quiet and how reserved Luke was being. And partially, yes, when you're getting crap cards, it's kind of hard to be all energy up. But give us something as to why they picked you in the first place here. I mean, he makes a pretty bad fold with two pair against Keating when he bluffs the river against him. And had he won that hand, that might have just sort of reshaped the whole narrative of Luke's journey as a loose cannon. But because he doesn't, from that point on, he's just kind of stuck in this. I'm up a bit, or I'm down a little bit, but I'm just not quite in a spot where I can make a big move.
Yeah, it's a real shame to see the two pair, and they kind of try to hype it up in the coverage. Like, is he going to call? Is he going to do it? And unfortunately, he folds. I think I would have called in that spot. I don't know. I mean, it's you're playing with house money, right? You're given 100K. This is your time to shine and make some big money for yourself and your partner. So maybe I call. And again, I understand, you're playing for a lot of money. Alan Keating's acting crazy. Veldhouse and Keating are playing $100,000 pots every time you look away. So, I can understand being a little bit nervous, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen him step up a little bit more. Haven't really talked about Wolfgang, who, comes off like a nice guy, comes off as fairly amicable. He busts in this episode. and is replaced with Chance Corneth, who, you know, again, isn't the most talkative guy in the world. He's kind of like Griffin Bender. He's sort of like half and half. Will banter a little bit, but is on the quieter side. But obviously is a terrific poker player. There's no denying that. So it's again just kind of a shame to see Moy just like this murderer row of poker players that he has to deal with, this murderer's row of big personalities that he has to deal with. And he's just sort of caught in the middle of it all. Again, you know, nice enough guy, no problem with him. But yeah, I mean, he's just sort of hovering around, you know, 110,000, which is, you know, $10,000. That's a lot of money, but, you know, he can't quite play for more. And then he'll go down a little bit and then he'll chip up a little bit. Just not quite getting anything going, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it just kind of feels like when you're a loose cannon, you're only playing premium hands. The rest of the table can pick up on that very quickly, and there are a few spots where even Keating made a really quick fold where when he never, usually does not fold pre-flop or post-flop, and because they saw that he had like I think it was like kings at one point that Luke had, everyone just like snap folded to his raise. And you know, Lex and Keating, there was one amusing hand between them where you know after Lex shows his flush Alan says, "You know, I haven't folded my hand right," as if he was going to turn over a better hand. He doesn't, but it was kind of funny. But it was in the first half of this table where Morgan J really hadn't won a single hand. He would maybe call pre-flop and then just fold, and so he was just gradually chipping down the whole time. And it was here where he finally busts out his ukulele and sings like a one sentence song. He does that three times at this point, and it wasn't until maybe a little bit later where it finally became maybe mildly entertaining when he would do it like he makes some sort of you could guess from the rhyme that's to come it's going to be either like all in or fold, like I'm feeling so cold so I guess I'll fold, stuff like that. But his poker play was very lackluster here, and which is a shame because we don't really get to see too much of Jay until we've extinguished the fact that Luke is going to play any hand at all until at that point. So, but again, with Chance Kornuth, I am a fan of him. I think he's a very good player. He was, I think more entertaining to watch than say Andre Akari was, or even Benjer. I think he was a bit more fun to watch, but. As we can see from the view count, again, each episode in this back half of this season dropped from episode to episode, and I think the internet's kind of waking up to the fact that this is not a successful endeavor currently.
Yeah, I mean the Keating Veldhouse stuff again is sort of the heart of this, but you have 2 out of 6 players be engaging and the other 4 just kind of so-so. Um, Again, Kuhn is a smart enough player that he kind of sees, all right, Veldhouse and Keating are sort of clashing. I'll back off and wait for my spots. That's okay. Jay, I mean, I don't know what his poker playing experience is. He talks a little bit about like playing poker with other comedians, but he really just seems to be a total amateur and is really just kind of there to pull out his ukulele and strum. How I feel about Jay is like he never made me laugh. I never really found him funny. I didn't find him annoying, which I kind of thought I would when I saw him like pull out the ukulele for the first time. And it is kind of nice, like everybody sort of appreciates his presence. They're having a good time sort of watching him. So he seems like a nice guy. But I saw like a lot of people in the YouTube comments be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to a Morgan J show now. I'm so excited." Like I wouldn't go and see him perform. Like I just kind of think it would get old after a while. But again, like he seems like a nice guy, and I wish him the best. But if you're going to bring in somebody who's, like that, I really kind of hope he can complement that with his poker play, but really just doesn't get anything going and is, just loses a lot of pots. Uh, yeah, I want somebody who has a balance between being entertaining and being a good poker player.
Mhm.
And, it's okay if there's a little bit more of a, poker skill and a little bit less screen engagement, or a little bit more screen engagement, a little bit less poker skill. But like the balance needs to be close to 60-40 either way. It needs to be roughly even. And, you can't just bring in some ukulele guy who's like, 95% screen engagement and 5% poker skill.
Yeah, and at one point, Morgan, he begins with $100,000 and he's down to like 15,000, 20,000. And so even when he doubles up, it's just really small money and he's still down a ton. So it's not even like, I can get too invested in his outcome. I mean, he never reloads. I feel like when you're under, let's say, 40,000 at this table, you really need to reload a little bit so that you have a little bit of meat on your bones when you go all in or when you double up so that you can, make a difference here because at these stakes here, it's just not gonna cut it. When Alan Keating is gonna pretty much call if any two cards anyway, and so you're gonna be out, in short order if you're not careful. The view count dipped from 129 down to 78,000, then 68,000, and then 66,000. So again, this is really minuscule. Now these episodes dropped only a few weeks ago, so I really doubt that we're going to see some substantial growth from them. Um, Basically, for the last three episodes down, it's pretty much just Luke Folds 10-3 offsuit, Morgan sings some song before going all in, and Alan and Lex playing a big putt against Alan. That's pretty much the same story beats, with the exception of the fact that Luke did win one hand hitting two pair against top pair to get into Profitville after being down from his peak. I want to say he was up like, was it like 40,000 or so, maybe in his top
Mhm.
peak. Then he took a few hits when he got bluffed, and a few other hands went against him. And then he was up to like 15,000-ish, and then he would just sort of dip down a bit, maybe win a few back and then dip down a bit. So that was really the extent of his sort of poker narrative at this point for the last few episodes. And so when they cut to the recap, oh, our loose cannon, he was up 20,000, now he's down to 18,000. It's just like, who cares? It's just not exciting.
Yeah, I mean, and he also just kind of seems bummed out for the last episode and a half, like just very glum, like, ho hum, I'm only gonna win $10,000, which, for me is like, I'm gonna win $10,000. Awesome. There's very few game shows where you win $10,000. And yeah, you were up 40K before, but I mean, you're still gonna walk away a winner. I'd be a bit like, yeah, like, if somebody asked me, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, a win's a win. I don't care if I win $100 or $100,000, be a little bit more amicable. So it's just kind of like a shame to see, this guy just kind of, I don't know, be like a sad sack and just kind of stop. Um, yeah, I mean, again, the Veldhouse, the Veldhouse Keating drama still sort of continues. There's still some sort of fun banter here and there, and Corneth gets into the action a little bit. Manages to pick up a couple hands, but it's kind of the same old after a while. Once you sort of get over the initial shock of like, oh my God, Alan Keating's raising $60,000 to 6-4. Once players sort of start to read him and adjust their games, then it sort of takes away from that a little bit. There's not, too many. They try to make a viral moment in episode 8 with Jay sort of going all in and singing this little song. And again, like it's cute. Everybody seems to appreciate it, which I like. But they spend like 5 minutes talking about it, like, oh, Jay, pulled out his song and he was thinking about a song to go all in, and he's so excited to be happy with it. It's like just show the hand. If you want to have Jay talk a little bit about it, that's fine. But don't have everybody else be like, it was so great to see this. This was the greatest hand ever. Just move on.
Yeah, and there was maybe in episode 9, there was one play that actually mildly impressed me to some degree by Luke, the loose cannon, where he does bluff Keating with like no pair, like 8 high, whatever it was. And so, but that's the only time that he like made a bluff that made sense and it worked. And so that he played poker of sorts. It's easy to play kings, ace, king, flop two pair, and win a hand. That's the only time he did anything somewhat like 2 out of 10 on the blip radar for poker prowess here. And so. I guess I'll give him a little bit of credit for that because, again, it kind of speaks to the flaw of the loose cannon structure where once you're down to the final, we'll say 30 or so hands, and you're up a little bit, you're almost kind of afraid to play to win more. You don't want to lose what you've won. And yet you've won so
Mhm.
little that you're going to feel remorse that you didn't win more afterwards. So it's this weird situation where which Luke kind of fell into where do I risk this $10,000? Do I just fold my way to the end? I mean, unlike season 1 of the big game where the top loose cannon won an additional prize, there's really no incentive to go for a bit more outside of the money itself. And when you're playing against such an aggressive table, or when because on his table, his next three majors are Veldhouse, Keating, and Chance Corneth, where if at least if Morgan J was on his left, then maybe you could be a bit more less handcuffed. I feel like the table draw wasn't very favorable for him either.
Yeah, I mean, he just got unlucky. I mean, the bad table draw, these players playing like lunatics and then just not really getting any cards. I mean, this 6-5 bluff that you mentioned is really like the only really impressive hand from the loose cannon across these 10 episodes, honestly. I mean, for the most part, Jordan and Luke just sort of have their hands play themselves. They'll raise with pocket kings and then fold because everybody knows they're playing tight. So I mean, this showed a little bit of something. But, again, as I mentioned with the loose cannon, by all means, put a personable person on television, but also, I mean, make sure that they have poker ability, really show that they, have what it takes to compete at this table and also can handle the nerves, right? Can, be able to keep talking even when they're down. Can they keep talking even though they're involved in these crazy pots? Need to have that component as well in the vetting process that they'll be able to keep talking even if they're not really feeling up to talking so that they're entertaining.
And again, by not having much in the way of loose cannon action in general, again, that's the factor that's supposed to make this show unique. And so it just speaks to how this is just another poker game between a few top pros. That's really all it is. And the thought occurred to me for episode 10, the finale here, that Morgan J could have just been the loose cannon instead at this point. Like, they should have just had him be the loose cannon and then had a different player at the table. Like, I'm still waiting for the promised Helmuth and Rob Gronkowski. I was like, where the heck are these two guys? And in the behind the scenes of these last couple of episodes, we're led to believe that Scott Seaver is the next backup poker player to go on the table if someone busts. But Morgan J, he busts with only a handful of hands left, so they don't bother rolling in Seaver like they did to Benger in season one, which is a shame because Scott Seaver is very entertaining, and I get that he wouldn't want to bother for like playing for like 10 minutes before having to leave, but I'm just wondering why wasn't Scott Seaver in one of these tables to begin with? I was stunned by that choice.
Yeah, I mean, you could swap out a car easily and put in Scott Seaver or something. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of strange because they sort of labeled this episode on YouTube, the episode 10, as the season finale. So are they not going to do the third loose cannon? Is that going to be in season three? Do they mean by season finale just like the finale of this batch of episodes? I don't know. I mean, this episode was uploaded 2 weeks ago, so maybe, a month from now they'll upload the next batch. Um, yeah, I mean, as you mentioned with, Luke being at 10K, he's not inclined to risk it, which is again fair enough. $10,000 is a lot of money. He winds up with 11,000 to be exact, and goes and gets married anyway. So, again, I'm happy for him. I'm glad that he made money. Again, it seems like he had a good time, but yeah, just like wasn't a super impressive, interesting loose cannon. And yeah, your insight about, Morgan J being loose cannon instead. I mean, they should have just picked him. I just think it's kind of weird to have, this dynamic. We have the loose cannon, and then you have like one or two celebrities or whatever you want to call them who basically have as much skill and experience as the loose cannon at the table. I mean, I think part of the fun is like it's the loose cannon up against these five pros, not three pros and then two sort of like semi-professionals, if that. They really need to work on that dynamic moving forward. And yeah, I mean, this last episode, again, most part just sort of things playing themselves out. Um, Kuhn sort of hypes up this fold as like, oh, I have a flush here, and I'm going to make this crazy fold, but he winds up calling, so it kind of undercuts that. Jay does go all in and busts with I think three hands left exactly, and he throws in his watch, and Kuhn actually keeps the watch, which I thought was kind of cute. And then Jay also goes to the break room and pretends to be upset. He like throws this big temper tantrum. She's like, no, I'm just kidding. Like that was kind of cute. Again, he seems like a nice guy. I just don't think he's super hilarious.
Yeah.
And then we get, as there was with the first batch of episodes, a sort of like ending montage of him being like, I had so much fun at the big game. This was so cool. It's like, if they're just going to be like, oh, I'm having so much fun, unless there's somebody who goes, oh, I had a terrible time. Like that would be funny to see if somebody's like, oh my God, I had such a terrible time. Um, you don't need to really include that, I think. Yeah, it's just a shame.
And one of the problems with episode 10 here is that they were constantly counting down only five hands left, only four
Mhm.
hands left. But the hands themselves were pretty dull for the most part. I mean, Luke apologizes at one point to the table for being boring, and Lex is kind of giving him like mentoring advice, like, it's up to you what you want to do. I mean, if it's worth it for you, you've won this much money, which is again very touching. But at the same time, it's just, it's $11,000. I mean, there are pots on high stakes poker that are $10,000, pre-flop or in the middle for each player, go into the flop here. And so it's just low stakes, bigger stakes than the first table was, better action than the first table was, but still a letdown. And again, after seeing season one before this, I wanted to see them up their game, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't just put Morgan J in the first table where the stakes were lower, so the money would be a bit more. So actually, you have two bullets instead of one bullet. I mean, since he didn't reload or anything, and then you could have had Seaver in his spot so that you have players that are used to bigger stakes playing in the bigger stakes game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just kind of strange in terms of the strategy and the editing choices. just how many recaps there are, how many postmortems there are, how it takes over 5 minutes for, in the episode to actually start. They really just need to tighten things up. I mean, if these are going to air at television at some point, okay, I understand that you want to edit it for, ad breaks and things like that. But I mean, if you're posting these on YouTube and you're not televising them, and you don't need to edit them as though they're a traditional episode, edit them for YouTube, edit them without these ad breaks and recaps. Just let the hands play themselves out. Don't have so many interviews. They need to learn a lot of lessons from this. And hopefully people in the YouTube comments are leaving their genuine thoughts and will hopefully change things up. I saw Ben, you did leave a couple of comments saying, this episode put me to sleep and things like that. So hopefully they are reading those and taking notes. I did notice that a couple people were talking about Jordan being like, in the future you need to have a player who's a bit better. And the admin of the page actually responded and said that they were taking notes about that. So hopefully that'll be the case. I mean, hopefully there'll be a season three. I would like to see more of this, even if it's imperfect, because I think it's an interesting format and has a lot of potential. But given the view counts, I mean, I don't know if there'll be a season three or not.
Well, I mean, we'll probably see the third loose cannons table at some point. How would they classify it as season two, part three, or season three, part one? We'll find out. And again, it just comes down to get me some good players here. I mean, I feel like maybe Gronk is as big a name in the U.S. as maybe PK is in the Europe. Maybe I'm not sure, so maybe that wouldn't make a huge difference. I'm only speculating at this point, but Helmets against Gronk, I would pay money to watch that show. So hopefully they don't shy away from those cool lineups here. And again, maybe they're just holding the best table for last. But at the same time, they had the biggest blinds in the middle here, so it'd be kind of a weird flow to go from Jordan to Luke to the other Luke. But I don't know, we'll see. I found Morgan to be less annoying than our fan who from the guy I forget his name from season one who would put in like a same $100 bill in the $300 bet or whatever it was, whatever his name was. I forget his name. But as its sequel, I mean, it's kind of like with a show like Survivor. You have a new season, new players, maybe one or two rule changes, and it just kind of comes down to was what they put everyone in the arena, and it's up to them if it's entertaining or not. And so, there are seasons of Survivor that are really good, some that are really bad, some that are in the middle. So I kind of compare this to that kind of nature of a sequel where it's, similar rules but different things happening. But I definitely let down. I'm, again, now I'm definitely less excited for the face of the next table. But if there is Helmuth, then I'm willing to reserve some hopes for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I mentioned, I mean, I don't understand this idea of there's the loose cannon, there's two or three premium pro players, and then just like two random people. I mean, get five interesting pro players. Why not get somebody like Scotty Wynn? Why not get somebody like Mike Mattisau? Is he sort of like older players who have kind of faded away, but they have personality, right? I'd rather have one of those players than, some online bracelet winner I've never heard of. So again, I hope that they are taking notes and they will reform things. Again, I'm not issuing death threats against the producers or anything. I wish them all well. But yeah, I mean, it's this needs some significant improvement from season three. I don't think they learned from season one the mistakes that they made in season one. So hopefully they will improve as time goes on.
Yeah, and really, I think for me, the biggest thing that they could change very easily is have fewer postmortems and give more time to each postmortem. Let me know about why they played a hand a certain way, not their emotions about the hand afterwards. Tell me about why they played pocket queens on an ace, king, jack board this way, what their opponent was thinking at the same time, and go back and forth. Give me some really good poker breakdowns, even if they're wrong about why that if they're wrong by a GTO standards of poker. Just give me some more of that so I can learn about how these players play more. That's what I want.
And if you can't do that, just get rid of them. That's my opinion too. Like if you don't want to have this in-depth analysis, you're creating it for a general audience, I understand. Just get rid of them and just give me one or two extra hands. Even if it's not like a super exciting hand. I want to see a little bit more dynamics building. I want to see a little bit more of the loose cannon talking. I want to see, the loose cannon do, what they do with eight deuce offsuit after they've been carded for a while. I want to see them make a race with that. Give a little bit more of that.
And just pick better loose cans. I mean, at one point, Joe was basically criticizing Luke's, play like every hand he played. It was getting to be quite ridiculous. And again, you picked him. You picked him. You picked Jordan. You picked the other Luke. So you have to, there could be some comedy in the booth, like, oh, we picked him. What were we thinking? Give us maybe some humor there because, really they just did not play up to what the auditions would suggest that they would, how they would do.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sequels, we could say it's maybe not quite Home Alone 6 level, but it starts to get there.
Hold on,
So
hold on, four.
yeah, Home Alone 4.
Other poker news coming up. So I guess on Squid Game, The Challenge Season 2, the 2023 main event runner-up Stephen Jones is in there. Now I haven't watched
Mhm.
Squid Game or the Squid Game Challenge or anything like that, but maybe in the future I'd be compelled to watch it to see how he does. It'd be kind of funny. He's young enough to maybe physically have the chops to go pretty far. That'd be kind of cool. And also coming out now on YouTube, just as Chase to Dreams Season 2 is being released, a different poker documentary series called No Limit is coming in. I believe one or two episodes have already dropped, and so it might be fun to kind of do a compare and contrast of those two poker doc series, have them face off and see which one's better. Again, I'm excited about Chase Dream Season 2 due to the trailer we saw with Rec.poker and now with No Limit covering top pros in the 2024 World Series in Paradise. I'm actually very excited to watch those two.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, it seems like with season two, they definitely stepped up their game. There's, more players. They seem to have a guy who won a bracelet, so that would be pretty cool. And obviously, we'd love to have Rob and anybody else involved with the production onto the show. So yeah, I mean, it should be interesting to see these, different poker media coming out. It's kind of strange to see all this media coming out. I mean, nothing really is, happening in the poker world that's super ambitious. And I'm looking at poker news here, and the top story is Israeli mobster threatens poker game host will, quote, end up like murdered poker buddy. So there's that going on in the poker world. Um, the NAPT is happening, nothing super special going on there. So, it's kind of nice that these poker producers are filling in the gaps in, the doldrums.
Yeah, so definitely look forward to our reviews of those going forward, and I think we're still hoping to do another review with Void or Ayunair
Mhm.
about a couple other poker movies in the near future. And I'm sure at some point the 2025 main event will be broken up to into episodes but go so we can cover those. So again, lots of stuff on the horizon. Very excited. And of course, if you have anything at home that you want us to review or discuss, let us know in the comments section. We're happy to discuss those, or if you want to be a guest on our show, we're happy to include you there too.
Yeah, feel free to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Obviously, we're trying to follow everything in the poker world. The Mind Sport Olympiad is, I think, in January. They haven't really made any announcements yet, so obviously we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, I mean, again, kind of a slow time in poker. So if you have anything that you want us to talk about, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the third entry in this World Series of Poker video game stuff was not released on the console that me or Sam owns. I believe it was released a year later, called Battle of the Bracelets. Maybe I'll just research on my own how the game changed things up compared to the Tournament of Champions '07 edition. But if anyone does have a copy of that game, let me know, and I'm happy to we're happy to review it some way or buy it off you, or whatever. It'd be kind of cool to have the full set in our game collection there. But until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, and enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care, everyone.